Okay, so I guess we can start. So we have 10 families with us, and I'm pretty sure
Great,
that Charlotte and Isaiah are going to be here too. So
great.
I'm so excited to introduce a friend of Connected North to all of the boys and girls who are adventurers. And today we're going to be glaciologists. Is that the correct term, Jill? Glaciologists.
Uh, Actually, today I'm going to share with you a whole bunch of big animal encounters today,
Okay.
including some of the ones that I've seen on the ice. So,
Okay.
yeah,
So
lots to
this
learn today.
we're going to learn from Jill, who is a scuba diver, an author, a photographer. She is the first woman who was inducted into the Canadian Geographic, and is just an all-around amazing person. So she has some great stories to tell. If you guys can hold your questions till the end, that would be great, because Jill can't see your chat because she's connected in a different way. But I'm going to turn it over to you, Jill, and we'll see you in a little bit. I'll be monitoring the chat for sure.
Awesome. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with you today and share with you some of my underwater adventures. I'm just going to switch my screen here so that we can see some slides together, but you'll still see me here in the corner. Anyway, so I am officially an explorer, and a lot of what I do is inside underwater caves and underneath the ice. But I also have a chance to encounter a lot of big animals that I'm going to share with you today. But first, let me show you a little bit about what I do. So for my work, you might find me underneath the ice scuba diving. And sometimes when I do that, it means that I also have to camp on top of the ice, like here in the Arctic. This is actually on top of the Northwest Passage in Lancaster Sound in Nunavut, so very, very far away. Challenging camping conditions. But I've also been to the other side of the world in the polar regions, and I was actually the first person to go cave diving inside an iceberg. And this is a view from inside an iceberg looking out, and it's a stunningly beautiful environment. And so I was the first person to do this and to confirm that there were cave systems actually inside icebergs. But not everything I do is cold. I also go to places like this, the Sahara Desert. And that might seem like a really strange place to go diving, but there are places to dive in the Sahara Desert, places that look like, another planet. They're really, really remarkable places. Now, far away from there, you might even find me in Siberia. Here, I go cave diving in a beautiful cave that's the longest underwater gypsum cave in the world. This beautiful white cave system that's gorgeous. But you'll even find me inside of volcanoes. So this is in Lanzarote in the Canary Islands, where I've gone diving inside this volcano here, the Monte Corona volcano. So a lot of what I do involves cave systems, these beautiful underground conduits full of water, where it's like sometimes swimming through a crystal chandelier. Really, really beautiful. But like I said before, I also get a chance to meet a lot of very interesting animals on my dives. And I know a lot of kids are really interested in like the animals that I encounter underwater. Now, I have to do a lot of different things in order to maintain a career underwater. So it includes a lot of underwater photography, underwater filmmaking, so shooting things for TV channels. So I'm often carrying a big camera. Also, I work with scientists. I collaborate with them on different areas of science because they don't always have the skills to go to the places that I can go to. So that means that I work with people called hydrologists, archaeologists, paleontologists, scientists, engineers, all kinds of different people. To do the work that I do, I wear a lot of gear. In fact, it looks a whole lot more like what you would wear if you were an astronaut. This is very specialized equipment that is a lot like what an astronaut wears to do a spacewalk. It's a device that I wear on my back called a rebreather. And it's a little bit different than traditional scuba, because with traditional scuba, you take a breath in and then you exhale and you make bubbles. But with this device, I actually exhale my breath and it's recirculated in a loop. It goes through a scrubber that takes carbon dioxide out of the gas that I'm breathing and injects little injections of oxygen to make up for whatever my body has metabolized. And so that gives me the ability to go on really long dives to deep depths, way far inside the planet, into these cave systems that kind of branch out like the branches of a tree. And like I said, these are very beautiful environments, very old environments. Like this particular cave, we think is about 350,000 years old. So really, really beautiful and delicate environment. It's almost like swimming through a glass factory. Now, let's get on to the animals though, because there's a lot of animals that I get to see underwater that are very interesting. In caves, a lot of the animals that I encounter are very small and quite unique. Like this is a cave fish. So it lives its entire life cycle inside the blackness of an underwater cave. And it never comes out into the daylight. So that's quite a different existence than we can imagine. And because it lives its whole life cycle in the blackness, it has no eyes. It has what we call vestigial eyes, meaning there's sort of a spot where you can see like an eye should be, but it has basically devolved. It doesn't need that eye because it can't see anything in the dark. It also is pale, so there's no color, no pretty patterns on this fish. And again, because it lives its entire life in the blackness, there's no point in wearing a fancy costume if nobody can see it, right? So everybody's operating in a different way in the blackness. They're using different sensory strategies. If they can't see, then they need to be able to sense things like the motion of water or maybe electrical currents or vibrations. So they have other really keen sensory strategies. Now, other animals I see in the cave system look like this. So these are some crustaceans, a little bit different looking crustaceans, again, because they don't have eyes or color. And then there's one more of the fish, Lucifuga. That's one of our fish. And here's another very interesting cave adapted animal. And look at those really long pincers he has. It looks a little bit like a crayfish you might see in the river, or kind of like some of the bugs that you might have seen. But it's a little bit different, and it's white, so no eyes and no color. Here's
Jill,
one that looks, yeah.
Oh, so we just had a question. What do these animals eat if they can't see each other?
Yeah, so they some of them work chemosynthetically, and so they're eating like bacteria, sulfur-reducing bacteria, things like that. And they do actually hunt larger things, but they do it by waiting very quietly, like in the silt. And when they feel a vibration, they might go poof and grab it. Because there are things that do come and go from the environment and other things that live in the environment that they can grab. Some of them can grab its prey and neutralize it with venom. In fact, this one has venomous fangs and pincers. So it can leap out and grab something. It can inject venom, turn the guts into jello, and then it has kind of like a straw for a mouth. And over time, it will just suck the guts out of whatever it's caught. So kind of cool. So they live in caves. They live in places that look like this. Now, some caves that are underwater today used to be dry, and so things walked into the cave system, died there, and then later when the water levels were higher, they're now underwater. So here you're actually seeing, oh, there, sorry, you're actually seeing an extinct sloth. So we found the bony remains of sloths, of ice age bears, camels, horses, all kinds of weird animals inside of caves that are now underwater. But let's jump forward and go out into the ocean and see some of the animals that I'm able to dive with there. So here we go. I hear that some of you have already heard about whale sharks, and you might have learned about those from a recent astronaut presentation because your astronaut friend had a chance to dive with whale sharks too. Whale sharks are the biggest shark, and I just think they're beautiful because you can see they're covered with white polka dots, and you can see straight into this shark's mouth, and he doesn't even have any teeth. So I'm not scared at all of this shark. Rather than teeth, he has like a vacuum cleaner, and he sucks in a whole lot of water and sucks in like schools of small fish and plankton, tiny, tiny little things, smaller than a grain of rice. And even though he's the size of a school bus, he'll just keep vacuuming the water to filter all of these remarkable things out of the water. So here's another picture of a whale shark very close to the surface, and he's just about to open wide and suck in some food. And I know it looks like he's chasing this fish, but this fish is actually kind of a parasite. So this fish, it's called a remora, is not worried about getting eaten by the whale shark. What he's going to do is he's going to kind of attach himself with, like you can see, it looks like he's swimming upside down, right? Well, the top of his head is very flat. It's kind of like Velcro, and he can stick himself onto the neck of the whale shark. And what he does is he just attaches himself, and then anything that falls and dribbles out of the whale shark's mouth, he sucks up. So he just goes along for a free ride, rides around on the ocean with the whale shark, and is able to get his food that way. So this is a very, very lazy fish called a remora. So here's a photo of the whale shark. And I know it looks a little odd because I've tipped it on its side here, but that's the whale shark doing his vacuuming. Here, I'll rotate the photo back to the way it should be. And you can see he just sucks up a lot of stuff, and he manages to keep getting enough food, and the water filters out through his gills. So he keeps the solid food, and the water just passes right on through his gills. So that's one of the biggest animals that I've swam with. I've swam with humpback whales that are even bigger, but these are just so beautiful because you can get very, very close to them. Now, here's one more photo. I know it looks like he's eating my friend, but that's just to give you a sense of scale. She's actually just swimming on the far side of him, kind of trying to look into his mouth. But that gives you an idea of how big this animal is. All right, here's another really big animal. This is called a mobula ray. So some people call them devil rays. They are huge. I could outstretch my arms, and this mobula ray is much, much bigger. They can be 2, 3, 4, even 5 meters in their wingspan. And in order to dive with these, I go to a place called the Azores Islands. It's part of Portugal, but it's in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. They're volcanic seamounts in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And these animals like to feed in deep water, and they feed kind of the same way the whale sharks do. They suck in from underneath. Their mouth is on the bottom, and they just vacuum in a bunch of ocean water and then filter the water through. And so inside their mouth, they have kind of like a bony grinding plate. So not normal teeth, but they'll suck food in and then kind of grind it across the top of their mouth to turn it into mush so that they're able to swallow it. So here's a closer picture of a mobula ray, very, very interesting looking animal. And look, this mobula ray has remora fish too. So there's 2 remoras on the front one and 1 remora on the back, and they're hitching a ride again to catch anything that dribbles out of the mobula ray's mouth. So they're parasitic fish, basically. Now, here's a funny story. There was one time when I was hanging out and a large mobile array came very close to me with its remora. And the remora looked at me and looked at the mobile array and looked at me and looked at the mobile array, and it went, I've never hung out with one of those before. And the mobile array came right over and sucked onto the front of my wetsuit, and just there it was, like on the front of my body, and its tail went almost down to my feet. It was so big. And I was like, get off me, I've got nothing to feed you. And it hung around on me for about 5 minutes before I could kind of push it off. But I have to say that Velcro and suction that it can suck onto you with is pretty amazing. Now let's move from mobile arrays, devil rays, to one of the gentlest big animals that I've ever had a chance to be with. All right, some of you might have had a chance to swim with these guys. These are manatees. I'm just gonna move so you can see this manatee. But we also call these sea cows, okay? And I bet you would never guess what their closest land relative is. And if you know, you can go ahead and type in the chat room, but I'm going to tell you in a minute. So it kind of looks a little bit like the skin that you see on the manatee, because its closest relative is the elephant.
And someone got that. Gabby.
Yay! Good job, Gabby. That's awesome. And if you look really closely at his flippers, he actually has kind of like fingernails that are sort of like ours. And his skin kind of looks like an elephant's, and it has hair. So there's actually little hairs that stick out of its skin. These animals are so docile. You can swim with them in Florida in the Crystal River and get a close look. Like here's a mother with a baby. I know that the close one is the baby. It's hard to imagine an animal that big. It's almost the size of a car, but that's a baby, and it's actually nursing right there. It's latched right on to its mother's flipper there, and it's actually nursing. And that's what it's doing right there. And you can see some of them are quite lumpy, and they have some algae growing on them. Now this poor baby has some scratches on it too. And those scratches were probably caused by the propeller from a boat. And we know that because of those parallel lines. So when the propeller spun and the manatee came to the surface to catch its breath, because it has to come to the surface to breathe, it probably surfaced under a boat and got hit by a propeller. So fortunately, it looks like this manatee's healing okay. But that's one of the biggest dangers to manatees is encountering boats. So let's look next at seals and sea lions, because they're pretty special animals too. Now, seals and sea lions look pretty similar. And I bet you some of you already know what the difference is between seals and sea lions. But basically, we can look at the ears, and we can see that a sea lion has a little bit of a flap as an ear, where a seal just has a hole. The sea lion sits up on the rocks, where the seal will kind of flop along the surface and drag itself along the surface. So they're a little bit different, but they're very easy to mistake one for the other when you're in the water. Now, I've done quite a bit of time swimming with sea lions out in British Columbia, California sea lions and Steller sea lions, and they're quite curious animals. They're very family oriented. They live in groups, and they live on top of the rocks on the surface. But when I jump in the water, they go, oh, yay, there's someone for me to play with. And they jump and they swim in. And sea lions will, they'll grab me. They'll kind of like test different parts of me. Like when I'm not wearing a helmet, I've had them like grab onto my head just to kind of feel what that neoprene wetsuit that I'm wearing is like. Sometimes they've even pulled my gloves and stretched them. And I had one that actually bit onto my shoulder to feel my shoulder, and it was a little baby with very sharp teeth, and he actually punctured my dry suit. Didn't hurt me, but punctured my dry suit. I've also had these sea lions play catch with me, where they'll go fetch rocks and things and bring them to me, and I'll throw them and they'll bring it back. And I've also had them steal my bubbles when I'm diving with normal scuba. They'll grab my bubbles and they'll swim away and bring them back and bleh, like spit them back in my face. So you can see how curious they are. They're swimming all around me here. I even had them steal my buddy's fins the last time we were out in British Columbia. They just came up and started tugging and pulled her fin right off her and swam away. And I swear they must have been giggling at the same time. So this is the other side of that photo from behind, where you can see they're all just in there checking me out and mobbing me. It's so fun because I never want to disturb an animal's ordinary behavior. I never want to chase an animal. We never ride an animal underwater. We never harass them. But when they come to you, like these sea lions do, because they're curious, it's on their terms, then it's a really wonderful experience to have. Now, some of the animals of the north in Canada that I've had a chance to dive with are walruses. And these it can be extremely dangerous because of their big tusks and the size of these animals. Some of them are as big as a minivan. They're huge walruses. And the thing that I find that most interesting about walruses is how you can watch them change color. So when they jump up on the ice to warm themselves on a sunny day, then you can actually see them change color. They get all pink and red because their blood vessels, they send the blood out to their skins so it can soak up all that heat. Their eyes turn red, they turn really pink, they warm up, and then they jump back into the water and they kind of get darker, and they take that warm blood and bring it into the core of their body in order to stay warm. So walruses are amazing. Now, this is a mother walrus with 2 babies, and she's teaching them how to hunt for food. And they dive down to the bottom, and she uses her great tusks to dig out clams on the bottom because they really like to eat shellfish. So they can smash those clams with their tusks and then eat what's inside. Now, this is the footprint of another remarkable animal of the north that I've had a chance to dive with. And I had a chance to dive with polar bears. This is a polar bear footprint for a movie called Under Thin Ice. And if you haven't had a chance to see it, you can stream it for free on CBC Gem. And so you can check it out there, or if you want to play with an app, you can go for Mac to the App Store or on the Android Google Play Store and download a free app that we created called Discover the Arctic. And we have one version in English and one version in French. And you can see a lot of these animals that I had a chance to swim with for that movie. So polar bears, beluga whales, narwhals with great tusks, bowhead whales, and seals. So you can see and learn about all of those animals on the free app. Now, polar bears are quite difficult to swim with and very dangerous to swim with, and this is the small boat that we're working out of. It's just a canoe with a big outboard motor on it, and an Inuit guide takes us out there to where we can catch the footage that we want to catch from underwater. This is again a mother polar bear with her babies, and she's teaching them to swim, and they can swim great distances. They can swim for 10 days constantly without stopping to feed. They can swim 10 kilometers an hour, and they can set out in the open ocean and swim to a distant island and laser sharp without even seeing it on the horizon. So somehow they have very special navigational abilities. And this is what they look like when they're swimming very, very close to me. And I'm very quickly trying to go underwater so I can just get a photograph of it as it swims over top of me. So Polar bears are pretty amazing. So now what I want you to think about is, what is the most dangerous of all of these animals? Okay, so I know some people will think, gosh, maybe the sea lions, they might be dangerous. And I know a lot of you are also thinking, hey, you haven't told me anything about sharks. That's gotta be the most dangerous thing you encounter. Well, I've spent a lot of time in the water with different sharks, with lemon sharks and reef sharks and bull sharks, whale sharks, all nurse sharks, many, many different types of sharks. I'm not terribly worried about sharks because usually when I get in the water, they are terrified. They're going, oh no, a human, and running away as fast as they can. Now, some sharks are very big, like this huge great white, right? But historically, we have much, much larger sharks that lived in the past. In fact, check this out. This is the tooth from a megalodon shark. So that's a pretty big shark. And this is a small tooth from a megalodon. I've seen megalodon teeth that are like this tall. So megalodon sharks that used to be on Earth were big enough that I could have stood up inside their jaws, be standing on their lower jaw with their mouth open, and they'd be taller than me. So imagine that. But sharks are scared of humans. Now, I bet some of you are thinking, maybe it's the walrus that's the most dangerous of all. And you'd be pretty close. That's getting right up there. Walruses can be very dangerous because they're incredibly protective of their families. And as soon as I jump in the water, that walrus usually swims to the closest piece of ice and starts bashing it with its tusks to show me what it would do to me if I got anywhere near its kids. So walruses are pretty dangerous. In fact, we think they're probably more dangerous than the polar bears, okay? But out of all of these things, relatively, this is probably the most dangerous animal of all. So this animal, called remipede, the one with the venomous fangs and the pincers, if it's only little, so it's a tiny little animal. But if it was the size of a cat, like the size of your cat at home, it would be the most dangerous animal on the entire planet. So it has a very amazing venomous bite, and that's what makes it such a special and dangerous animal. So I hope some of you guessed that, but why don't we open it up for questions or comments, and we can talk about what you've learned or experiences you've had or what you think I should be scared of.
Okay, so adventurers or explorers like Jill, what do you have any questions? May said that she just downloaded the app, which is great because I put that in the.
Oh, good.
Charlotte and Isaiah, is it easier to swim in warm water or cold water? Which do you like doing more?
Oh, what a great question. Well, I love warm water because it's easier. Because when I dive in cold water, I have to wear like very heavy undergarments, kind of like the sort of snowsuit you might wear on like a snowmobile or something. And then I have to put another suit on top of that to keep me dry, because if you get wet, you get cold very, very fast. So cold water is a lot harder. So I kind of enjoy warm water, but I have to be honest that a lot of the most remarkable encounters that I've had have been in cold water. And so I'll go through the extra effort to make that happen. But gosh, right now I love swimming in my river right out back in my backyard.
That would be that's just awesome. George wants to
Yeah.
know, have you ever discovered a new species of sea creature since you've been in places no one goes?
Yes, I have. So in the caves, I work with a lot of biologists and we collect new species. And so I've been on a team that's discovered new species. And also my team discovered a new subspecies of orcas, killer whales in Antarctica. And these days I'm working in an underwater cave system near Ottawa where I'm discovering a lot of new phenomena. And we don't know whether these are new species yet or whether they're a species that lives outside the cave that has unique adaptations to the cave system, like albinism, meaning like they're white instead of colored as they would be out of the cave. So we're still waiting to find out whether we have a new species or just an interesting adaptation.
That's awesome. Now, excuse me, Rael lives in Iqaluit. So she would like to know, what is the farthest place north you have dived?
Oh, yeah. So Devon Island probably be the farthest. So we come through Iqaluit and go up to Pond Inlet or Arctic Bay and then head out and live on the sea ice there. I wasn't able to go to Nunavut this summer because I think fortunately you're probably still free of COVID, which is good. And we didn't want to bring it up to Iqaluit. So we canceled our expeditions this year. But I'm hoping that it will be safe enough for me to return next year because I love Nunavut. It is one of the most special places on earth.
That is so true. It is such a beautiful, special place with wonderful people. Isaiah asked this question. Was your family scared when you started diving in dangerous places?
My family is still really scared about what I do. None of my family are divers. And so we all get scared of things that we don't know, like things we don't understand, things that are new. And that's okay. Being scared is fine. I'm actually still scared when I go diving. So when someone tells me, I need you to jump in the water with that polar bear and bring us back some footage, I'm like, really? Oh my, like my heart's racing. But when we embrace fear and do things that scare us, that's when we become explorers. So that's when we have the opportunity to discover something new for ourselves, or maybe even something new that's new to humanity.
That's a really great way to put it. May says, I just called her Boo because that's her email name, but May said the app told her that a male polar bear weighs as much as a grand piano, which is a really cool fact.
Yeah, that's great.
And when you were in the desert, was it very hot? From Faye and Wesley.
Oh, what a great question. So the Sahara Desert, I was in North Africa and I was traveling from Cairo, Egypt, and I went west to the Libyan border in the Sahara Desert. And we all think that, oh my gosh, that's really, really hot. And in the summertime, it's almost too hot for me to survive. I can't take it. It's really, really tough. But in the winter time, the desert can be very cold. So I was there in January. Last time I was there in the winter, and it was very cold. In fact, I ended up buying a long wool cloak from a Bedouin, a head to toe hooded cloak that kept me warm when we were camping there. And at night it was extremely cold. Even the water was cold. So there's quite a different temperature variation in the winter in the desert.
That's just something that we assume that it's hot there all the time. So it's really interesting that their system changes too. May says it on the app, it talks about you and Mario. Who was Mario?
So Mario was the other underwater filmmaker, my partner. Mario's actually been diving in the Arctic for 40 years. He's older than I am. So he was the very first person to swim with polar bears and walruses in the wild. And he's just a remarkable filmmaker too. He grew up in the Magdalen Islands, and he's a native French speaker.
Awesome. So that's a great question, May, because it shows that you're doing some research already. Charlotte would like to know, could there be caves under their house? And they said that's kind of tricky. And how would you know if there was a cave under your house?
Yeah, we don't always know. I have cave dived underneath of bowling alleys, an industrial park. I've been underneath people's houses and golf courses and an industrial park. I even went cave diving underneath a Sonny's barbecue restaurant, which was crazy. So basically, like the water that comes from rain soaks into the ground and it passes in between the grains of sand and moves its way down and down, like into the earth, like as if the earth was a sponge. Like if we think of the earth like a sponge, it's a really good analogy because it soaks up whatever lands on the surface of the earth and gets carried down through the rain. Now, the rain will always be able to travel through small spaces, cave-like spaces, but only some geology is good for caves. So places where there's a lot of limestone rock, it's easy to dissolve that rock. That's where we tend to find caves. But even here in the Ottawa area, where I'm diving in an underwater cave, I do go underneath people's houses. So it's possible that there's one under your house.
That's really to think about.
Yeah.
And I have a question that the students might be interested in, because we read it in your book, is how do you become a scuba diver? And what kind of jobs do you have if you are a scuba diver?
Yeah, so you can start your journey in scuba diving as young as 8 years old. You can actually get fully certified as a scuba diver when you're 10. So you take what we call an open water scuba diving class. And if you're younger than 15, then you get a junior certification. So meaning that you have to dive with a professional or a parent until you're at least 16. And then you're able to just go out with your friends who are also scuba divers. So an open water class doesn't take too long. It's you can do some learning online and then do some pool training with an instructor, and then they take you out for 4 dives, and then you get a certification card that's kind of like a driver's license, except that it's a diver's license. And anywhere in the world you can learn, as long as there's an instructor who can take you through that journey.
Oh, so Ray, where are they? What do you mean, Rael? What do you mean, classes to take for your scuba lessons? My kids took them at the, yeah. So through the, you can maybe look and see if they're at your community center.
Mm-hmm.
If that's open.
Yeah, or you can even just go on to like Google and type in scuba lessons, and you should be able to maybe find a local scuba shop that has instructors that can teach you.
Yeah, I'll look the next time. I think, Jill, the next time we're in Iqaluit, we should maybe look for the dive shop so we know how to answer that question for our friends in Nunavut.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure there is somebody somewhere because there's a lot of adventurers up there. So yeah. We're almost out of time, and May just ended by saying thank you for telling us about the app that will keep her busy today. And I agree. I think it's a great app where you could do some more learning and dream about what kind of adventures you could do with the animals. And Jill, as always, thank you for such a great presentation. I think this is something that we could maybe talk to all the students in Connected North about when we go back to school. And because this was just perfect with the big animals, and this is where, everybody loves animals and we love adventures and learning how to take care of the animals and taking care of the earth. Mm-hmm. So thank you, Jill, as always. And we will, boys and girls, I guess we'll see you on Tuesday, because next week is called Art Attack. So we're going to be using things from nature in art. So
I love it.
Yeah, thanks.
I want to do that.
Well, you can come our first. Oh, I can't. Katie, can we give them a preview about what we're doing on Tuesday?
I guess, because I'm feeling soft because I have a baby in my arms.
Oh, look at that. Did you make that?
Oh, that's cool.
That is cool. Is that the sloth skull?
So no, this is just a bone I found on a beach, and then I found this piece of slate in the river that we think it's from a roof, And then I put some little feed on the bottom of it so that,
Cool.
yeah, now I can look at it. And I'm going to add some colorful things to it.
That's awesome. Well, you're also a designer, so you know about design. So people who are here, we are going to be making a cucumber penguin on Tuesday. Yeah, that's our nutritious snack. So come and learn how to do that on Tuesday. And everything else, we're going to be doing painted rocks so we can have a pet rock. Yeah, I know. Yay. It's going to be exciting. So thanks, Jill. We will see you soon.
All right.
Take care.
All right. Be safe, everybody. Stay
Okay.
well.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
We had fun too.
Bye-bye.
Seriously.